welcome back to the Mama Gang podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Bell.
And I'm Sophia. And usually Brittany introduces all of us.
I usually do, but this time I'm tossing it over to So because Sophia has a connection to our guest that we brought back in again.
Yes. So we had to bring back my auntie Riri, who you all know as Dr. Burke. And we're going to get really deep today.
Yes. Dr. Elizabeth Burke. She is
hello.
Amazing. Hello and welcome to the show. Welcome back.
I am
actually.
so excited to be back. Thank you so much. I had so much fun last time.
We had too much to speak about that we couldn't just have you in one episode. We had some questions that got asked from our viewers, and we were just like, we got to bring her back. We got to. First of all,
I'm ready.
We got to talk about you and your accolades. For those who are just now tuning in, Dr. Burke, first of all, is a mother of three.
Tres niños.
She not only is a mother of three, but she's a professor. Her Bachelor of the Arts came from UCLA in linguistics. She is a psychology doctoral degree holder. She is established in her academic accolades from Pepperdine University, which I admire her for. She's her PsyD in Pepperdine, specializes in multicultural examination of mental health through the lens of neuroscience, humanistic psychology, African-centered psychology, Buddhist psychology, and second and third wave behavioral therapies as it relates to trauma and the transgenerational trauma that can be transmitted through families. That's incredible. Yeah. And she's a public speaker, an advocate of literacy and mental health and underserved populations, which is huge. She is just a giver. And she's published. She has published in autism, historical trauma, trauma recovery, spirituality, productivity, and COVID-19.
Yeah.
Do I need to say any more? She is really well established and completely an honor to have on our show. So thank you, Dr. Burke.
Oh,
I just had to sing your praises.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It's so amazing to hear all of these accolades, but really to me, she's Auntie Riri. You guys are going to get to know her on a deeper level. And as I said on Brittany and I's episode previously, you'll get to know the Burke family and me a little bit more too. And also Miss Brittany, because we're going to get deep.
Yes, we're getting deep. So, Dr. Burke, we got a question that came in
So
from
is this
one of
the episode
our...
where we get super deep?
Yes, we have to.
Okay.
We're going to get right into it because we already
ready.
started the surface talk in the last part one of this. But we had a question that came in, and I'll let So ask it. It came from the hood, motherhood, because you know how we do. We always have to take in a question on every episode. So here's the question that came over after our first part one episode with you.
Okay.
Awesome. So this question is for you, Dr. Burke. It says, how are you handling the abundance of new siblings for your children?
The abundance of new siblings for my children.
No, actually, it was about the abundance of siblings in your life.
Oh,
They wanna know about
want to know
my
about
life.
you.
Oh,
They're
okay.
asking about my life,
So-
about my abundance of new siblings in my life, which is like a whole nother thing I haven't, like, we need to talk about.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we don't need to.
Well, maybe we should get deep.
No.
let's get
We
it.
gotta
Let's get it.
Auntie Riri,
Please.
like, let's get it.
let's focus on the fact that, look,
I have lots of siblings.
20.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Plus.
the question came to you, and we got two questions that came in, but the question that came to you was, how do you handle the abundance of siblings? Because you have a very interesting dynamic in your family. There's so much. So I just like to know about the psyche of you in the younger age to the older age and, you know, your psychology in that too.
You know, like I said in the last show, all of my siblings, it was like a certain time period in my dad's life where my siblings were a part of. And every time he married and had more children, it was a different era in his life. So I didn't really get to grow up with my siblings, but when we became old enough and my siblings reached out to me and I was able to hang out with them more and spend time. I mean, they would come in and out and, you know, see their dad when I was with him. But then there's sometimes where, you know, he traveled a lot, so he's seen them without me. But how I manage that now is I just love on my siblings. I mean, you know, there's definitely dynamics where there's lots of misunderstandings. Like
what?
Misunderstandings more like, you know, the way that perhaps the way daddy acted, like there was more love for you or more love for your siblings or something to that effect, when it was really, and I think we touched on this last time, when it was really he just became more mature, more tempered, more life experience. It's kind of like my older siblings had the most rigid part of my dad, where my dad over the years and over time and over experiences and over hurts and over pains and over, you know, failing terrible mistakes in the relationship with his kids, he realized that doesn't work. And so I've been so fortunate that I get to receive the blessings from all of the hardship that my siblings went through with my dad to make him a more tempered, more mature, more secure individual.
You have a really healthy perspective on it looking back, you know. I would be curious to hear how some of your siblings would feel too, you know, given that they maybe didn't get certain aspects of your dad that you did. And that comes to your mother.
Yeah.
Over here, Sophia, your mom is her sister from a different mother. And it's just interesting to me because from psychology perspective, I'm looking at your dad's behavior and then I'm thinking about how it impacts the kids. And then I'm thinking, you know, there's so many avenues to it. I have empathy. You know, I wonder what is it underneath, you know, that really got him to decide to do that. And then I know there's the fame aspect. There's so many angles. But what really hits me is what you just said about how there could be some of that. I didn't label it the same word as you, but animosity, I would say.
Sure.
You got treated better than the others. And you know, I don't know. I don't want to label what that's rooted in, but and you attributed it to his growth.
But that's all perspective, you know.
Yeah.
Like what is treated better? You know what I'm saying? It's so funny because I think about my older siblings, and it's like my dad's career really took off and was really at a high point with my older siblings, and they got to experience all of that.
Like
where.
what?
$1 million contracts,
multiple
in the 60s
homes,
and 70s,
multiple cars.
Beverly Hills, Rolls Royces.
Thank you. Come on, Sophia.
In the 60s and 70s, 80s, for an African
Television
American
shows.
artist to be, you know, he was a pioneer. So he was very successful. I mean, he even got them $1 million record deal back in the 70s, was it?
The kids?
Yeah. Before the Jacksons, it was, what was it?
It was the
Sons and Daughters of Solomon or something?
Yeah, but it was also, what is it, like
Kids music or
like
kids something.
The
Kid Power.
Kid Power.
Kid Power.
That was it. And you can still look that up on YouTube.
Yeah, they
still
were
have it, yeah.
signed. They were the first family. Everyone could sing. Everyone's beautiful. Could sing, dance, and they had their own cartoon and everything. And they had $1 million contract back then before the Jacksons.
Yeah.
They were before the Jacksons, and their mom kidnapped them. And then the Jacksons got signed and took over. So it's just so much history there. So Auntie Riri hit on a very important point. That's
Yeah. I don't even think I've been able to really tell my siblings and them to feel this way, where I'm just so grateful for them. Like all my dad's rough edges, they had to get poked with all the rough edges. And from them, I was able to get more smoothed out dad who was able to have a capacity to love more. Yeah.
What's your perspective on it, given that your mom was, you know, you were raised with your mom in, you know, a different light than that?
respect and admiration. My mom is the most unselfish person that God created. Being that she didn't have her dad and her mom passed away when she was like 12, she sacrificed everything to make sure that we had everything we needed to be successful in life. Even staying with my dad, who wasn't the best husband, but a great dad. Mm-hmm. Because of her experiences with, you know, her instability as a child. I feel like she didn't want to make the same mistakes that her parents made. So she wanted to break those generational curses, and she did. I have 3 amazing brothers. And Mom, if you're watching, I love you. You're phenomenal. You're amazing. And I owe everything that I am to you and God and to my grandpa, because I moved in with my grandpa in 2004 when I finished high school. And
What was that like?
I didn't know him as grandpa. I knew he was my grandfather because he would visit me from the time I was born up until the time I was 18, but it was just sporadic moments. And I always remembered every time he would come, he would be on tour, he would be in our city, he'd be doing a show, he'd come over and we would sing and he'd give us a $100 bill. At 3, 4, 5, and 6 and 7 years old, you get a $100 bill. You're like, oh, so you connect your grandfather with a $100 bill, which was very unhealthy. You know, it's just like, who does that? But that's my grandpa for you, you know. He wanted to make those moments with us matter and count. And I remember those moments. Even at 35 years old, I remember being a 6-year-old girl, sing a song for grandpa. And I sing and he's like, oh, here's $100, you know. So I knew I had a famous grandfather growing up, but I just didn't know on that level. And obviously when I moved to Calabasas in 2004 with my grandfather, he was obviously had Grammys and he wasn't, you know, in his career on the Chitlin circuit or anything like that. Those days were over. So I didn't get to experience, as my Uncle Selassie would say, the Motel 6 tours and things like that. I was on the like world-class 5-star tours in Africa and Morocco and, you know, all over the world. So my grandfather was healed by the time I moved here. I mean, he was in his late...
What does healed look like?
Healed to me looks like being in a space of forgiveness, surrendering, and being open. So my dad died in 2005 and my mom had been with my dad since she's 15. Keep in mind that my mom got married at 17 because she didn't have a dad. She was looking for that love, that support, that family. She had my brother. Her dad was never there for her. So she created her own family. I remember this story is crazy because my grandfather wasn't in the peak of his career. My mom graduated high school and she needed her cap and gown. And he sent her a check and that check bounced. My dad paid for my mom's cap and gown for graduation. Things and moments like that, they hurt, but at the same time, my grandfather was like in entertainment industry that was like so up and down and so unstable. So my mom's like, you know, I forgive my dad for that. He sent a bounce check. He probably didn't have it at the time. He had a lot of other kids he was taking care of.
Wow.
So moments like this bring me back to the point of I'm really grateful that my grandfather allowed me to be a part of, you know, the last 10 years of his life, the last decade of his life, because not only did I get to create moments and memories that I'll cherish for the rest of my life, so did my mom. So when my dad died, my grandfather said, hey, you need to come up here and spend time with your dad. They rekindled their relationship and they made up for all that lost time. And he actually asked my mom for forgiveness for not being there for her because he had so many other things going on. His career, his kids, he was never there for her. But in her 30s, she got a chance to just love up on him, be with him, you know, birthdays. She had never experienced her dad being at a birthday party for her.
Yeah.
You know, she got a chance to experience those. So it doesn't really hurt me. If anything, it makes me respect and admire my mom even more because she hid a lot of the, you know, unhealthy moments of her life from me so that I could be protected and have a normal, you know, upbringing. So I just love my grandfather so much to be able to acknowledge, hey, I had so many kids and so much drama, but you know what? At the final years of my life, I'm going to get it right some way, somehow. And he did.
Do you feel like your grandfather treated certain siblings differently from what you could see, given that she said that there was a little animosity like that?
Did he treat siblings differently?
Or households?
Or households? They probably say that about the grandkids too, because I actually lived with grandpa. So I'm sure they probably said, oh, well, Sophia. And I don't think it was necessarily that. I think it was the more you were around him, the more time and the more memories you got a chance to make. Yeah. So of
How
course,
do you get around him when you got like 21?
It's
you
tough.
make
You
your
know,
way
would make
to the
time.
front. You just make your way to
So
the
our
front.
Christmases
Hi.
would be
Dad.
like 5 turkeys, 3 hams, crab, Chinese food, black people soul food. Like we had
it all.
You know, the house in Calabasas there were people everywhere. We would have big Christmases, big Thanksgivings, and that will be your time to make those memories, those moments.
Yeah.
Kids will come in, one will leave, another one will come. Make time. You had to make your time.
As a mother, as a woman who enters a man's life with the knowledge of who he is, or at least the basic knowledge of who he is, right? Mm-hmm. And this is maybe speaking to the doctor side, but as moms and as women, you know, what I've come to realize is not everybody's like you. And so you can't always expect anybody to have the same school of thought or approach or character as you. And that's where a lot of forgiveness and just understanding and just release comes from, and surrender to the idea that everyone chooses to do things differently. And it also, in the psychology aspect of it, makes me think about what's operating people, what is making people move, you know? And so when I assess, just even taking myself out, although an avenue of me is in, right? Take myself out. And I look at it and I go, what would make, as a mother, what would make a woman want to enter into a man's life who has already established some sort of responsibility that needs to be pulled on his energy in these different avenues already? Because the way that I look at things, I'm like, as a woman, when I'm interested in a man, I take a look at him. And even in my real life, like I've looked at a man that had prior, children, and I said, okay, wait, I'm this person's friend, getting to know this person, but the ground rules, what's already established here, and how can I assess this and discern what's really going on here? Is there absolute separation? Because whether they say it or not, I need to assess if there is. Because words and actions are two different things. Another thing that I look at is what's happening in the world of the person, not in my world. What's going on over there? Is there absolute separation? Are they off in their own land, engaged and doing whatever they want to do in their own world? Okay, yes, as friendship is established, interest established, it's mutual, and then you don't see anything going, okay, it's, innocent about the idea of building. But when there's an understanding of a person and what they've got going on, and it's real life present and it's moving forward in their life, as a woman, and as a psychologist taking a look at it,
Sure.
what could be that enticing? Because from my perspective,
Oh, let me tell you.
as a woman, I got to be fed off of, and I can't speak for everybody. So let me just make that disclaimer. I'm not trying to imply this on people. I'm just saying to take a real wholesome perspective and be honest and vulnerable with myself as a woman. We women get very vulnerable to practicality. We want the practical side of things. We find a comfort in stability. We find a comfort in knowing that we're secure. And if we're insecure about something, literally in many ways, financially, we gotta, we start looking, and we see it all over Instagram, how people move to gain attention. We need attention. There's different avenues of ourselves. And when we're unaware of those vulnerabilities, it can just operate, and we call it ourself. And that's something that I think is really important, because when I think about women entering your grandfather, as nice as he could be and all these things, entering his life, what's motivating you to say yes to all of that, right?
Let me tell you.
Because I can say from my perspective later, but when it comes to me, but I want to talk about that. What do you think?
These particular individuals are bedazzling. They're charismatic.
Speaking of your grandfather specifically, right?
Yeah, well, we were talking about the draw of fame and the allure of someone who's in the entertainment business and who can command a crowd and, regale people, with their stories and things like that, where it's like, it's just interesting and fascinating. Now, just imagine you have this person in a one-on-one audience and they want to be one-on-one with you. It doesn't matter how many thousands of people that they just did a show for last weekend. It doesn't matter how many people were clamoring at the backstage. None of that matters. It's just that they're there with you right now. And then this intensity and this love and this charisma and all of this is yours. And they're willing to give it to you, and you're willing to accept it and receive it and share in those moments. And then you have these beautiful moments that you share, and it just feels like, and then you put the fame and and resources and money, and then that special time in these moments seem even more specialer when the backdrop is at the Louvre in Paris, or at in Hawaii, in the beautiful backdrop and the scenery. Like it all adds up to be like, wow. And then there's going to be some weekends where, this guy's kids are coming in and they have demands, and now there's an issue, and you need to help them, take them to this place or that place, or go get them this, or send them a package, or hit them up at Western Union, whatever it takes. You just do it. And then you get back to, those moments. oh my gosh, when it's just me and him, it's just me and that person, and it's worth it. It's like some people may not experience any of that in their lifetime at all. And then they feel like, I had those moments. That's when my life was exciting and thrilling and wonderful and all of that.
That's psychologically impactful on a person. Like, that just leads me to in part one of our conversation when you were talking about the implications of fame, you know, the way that it impacts a person's mentality and psyche, you know, not only the person in the position of public interest and appeal, but also not just the celebrity, but also the people that approach and come around that person and what that's being founded upon. That's very dependent upon that person's state of life and mind and being, you know, and where you're grounded at in life and what's important to you and where those values are. Because if you go from living at home and a life that could be, you know, very like mundane and hard to work at and, you know, not as exciting as that, and then you get exposed to this and you got access to that,
Yeah.
what that high feels like could be interesting.
Now, just imagine you're just living a regular life. You're working your job. You're doing your thing, and then you meet this charismatic, amazing individual, right? And then now, when you're with them, you get swept up into their world, and then in their world, everyone is clamoring for them and their attention and everything like that. And then they acknowledge you as, this is my partner. I'm with this person. You know what? I'm going to be busy doing these stuff, but can all of these people? Can you guys take care of this person? This is very special to me. And then all of a sudden, that person who's just regular, living their life, no one cares, and just mundane, and then all of a sudden, everybody and their mother is like, how can I help you? Are you thirsty? Would you like some water? Or you seem, you know what, let me go buy you a jacket right now, or let me get you this, or let me this and that. Are you okay? You know what, we can put you up in the suite. You don't have to be here in the green room. You can be over here, and you know what, let's get the helicopter down here to fly you over to here, because after this, he has to do another interview, and then he wants to meet you after this. Is that okay? Would the Mondrian be okay? Would the whatever hotel, would that be okay? Because is that okay? We'll send you that right now. Get the driver. It's a different life where you're like, I'm special. Everyone is clamoring over me just because I know this person. So that is very alluring. That is very addictive. Even.
Yeah, that could cause a lot of people to, especially women, to be more accepting of behaviors that they wouldn't necessarily accept early on. And I can understand that.
Of course.
But I think my perspective is so different when it comes to me as a woman. I think it's because I entered such a high profile industry at a young age. At 17, turning 18, I began to dance for the NBA. I was not in college, partying like a normal college girl would do and going to college football games. I was actually around like NFL playing, you know, player type atmospheres because I was in the NBA type atmospheres. And then it was like, you know, but one thing that held me down, thank you to my dad who raised me, was that strict atmosphere of being like, I had this like very strong reverence for like, I don't want to dabble, but I know my role in working in this atmosphere. So that protected me in the sense of like that vulnerability of just kind of having a guard up. But the exposure to those atmospheres, the glory, the lights, the all of that, and understanding the work process in the organization of the NBA, and then seeing behind the scenes, the families, the people, the way that they operate, it was exposed at such a young age to me that by the time I was in my 20s and then late 20s, and I had my son at 28, 28 turning 29, this was a part of like, this is how they operate. That's the world. That's the industry. Yeah. That's okay. Like, that's just another form. Another thing for me was like working in mass communications, television work. I've been asked so many times to do like, you know, the like celebrity gossip type stuff and all of that. And I'm just like, I have no interest because the way I saw them after being raised in that world or growing up in that world at such a young age, it was just like, they're people with high profile lives. So I don't know, my perspective was already in a different, maybe more, I was able to found my, you know, give my foundation in a different place. Plus, here came God at 21.
Yeah.
So shortly after, right after I finished dancing for the Suns and I was exiting college, boom, here come my relationship with God. That's where my perspective kind of shifts. And that's why having this conversation is super healthy, because I've had such a different perspective on the industry that protected me, but also gave me less of a sensitivity to that behavior, that it has helped me as a woman. And I appreciate that, because when I see stories, you know, like, unfortunately, like where R. Kelly, you know, and that, and I used to I looked at his life and I'm like, something happened to him. What happened? What caused that behavior? You know, because that's the psychology aspect of me and the intuition. And I'm like, you know, and then to find out that he had some hard aspects of his life that were really traumatizing. I can't blame that as the only reason for why a person chooses to do what they do. They have a responsibility to have self-awareness, but there's implications of their life that just run. And then you got yes men, and then you got, and then you got those vulnerable girls going,
you're so all that.
and you could change my life and cause these dreams. And then here comes the acceptance to some odd behaviors. And not to say that there's...
And if I just do this, and if I just agree to these behaviors, I mean, you know, it's just us and us and this other person or other people. And if I just do these, then I'll just move on, and then my life will continue. I'll be closer to this person, and I'll be even closer, and I'll be even closer, because he likes when I do this, because I'm the person that says yes, and I'm willing to do this, and he likes when I do it. So I can get closer and closer and closer. I just have to give away a little bit of my soul, just a little bit, but it's fine, because, I mean, what is it? Like, whatever, these particular acts or whatever, I'd probably do this with somebody else who wasn't famous or who could give me all these opportunities. And then they feel like, okay, well, I'll just do it. It's kind of like this agreeing to over time, and this allure, like, if I don't do this now, I'll never have it. I'll never be able to get it. I'll never be able to obtain this or reach these heights or do these things. People make decisions.
I really want to do research on this.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that what we talked about even in part one was those dopamine levels, like those rewards that go into our brain. I mean, the system that we are fed for media is based on like ads and rewards and getting those likes. I mean, that's been happening for ages. So how much of that impacts a person and the people around them to, you know, form this acceptance of things that maybe aren't so healthy, but they don't realize because it's just getting those extra little cha-ching, cha-ching highs, right? I just think about those things, and that's what I was thinking about when it came to that wide dynamic of family you have. And you guys have such a healthy, beautiful perspective to be like, and we loved each other, and, you know, and I see them in this, and I'm like, yes. And I could say that about a lot of things. But with everything comes that reality aspect of like, what's love and what we get to, because you've chosen the healthier route.
Yeah.
But how do we look from this point on at men in the industry and women enticed by the industry and just being around this world? And, you know, what message would you say as granddaughter and daughter to these people out there that are listening and looking, going, wow, you know? And what would that be beyond the message that we understand, which is you got to love each other? Well, yeah, you have no choice. That's your family. You better find love, right? Or it's turmoil and unhealthy, and you're just going to cycle down some unhealthy behaviors and hate each other. Like, who wants that?
Love yourself and your creator first.
That's huge. I have so much to say about that.
Yeah.
Y'all getting real deep. To thy own self be true. Okay? You can't think higher than the level you are exposed to. I'm not gonna lie. When I came from North Carolina and I rode in a Maybach for the first time, I said, Grandpa, what do I gotta do to buy one of these? Okay? And he said,
feels good to be taken care of, right?
You have to work hard, baby. And so that's what I did. My advice to a mother or woman, do not be excited for what somebody else can bring you. Be excited for what you can do for yourself first.
Yes.
Okay? Use your gifts, keep God first, and be the best mother that you can be to your children. keep your faith and God will always make a way.
This is huge because I think that for me, coming from such a strong position in the industry, I mean, acting, before I had my son, I was working on there was a movie, I had been heavy into my acting. I did the improv and I love laughing, like just wild side of fun and, humor, but then the deep side of acting, having a blast with all of that. And then, traveling the world, and I'm around people in the poker world. Dropping $100,000 in an hour and then it's just like, okay, whatever. You just kind of operate through it all. But you see all of that. And then I was offered, a movie deal, and this was like the chance, right? But I had turned down so many opportunities to be like, hey, come over and do, those casting couch opportunities. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do this my way. And I finally got to that point where I worked so hard. And it's like, wasn't the biggest box office role in the world, but I was like, I earned myself here. I've done everything myself. And then you shift, and I sacrificed all of it to be in, and I've built up this role within going to Miss Universe and Miss USA, and I've got, all these things that I was working behind the scenes on. And then I shifted everything to have my precious, amazing son. It's the best title I could ever have in the world is mother, because he is a joy and he's incredible. And I put it all to the back. I was finding my way in motherhood, but then I was finding my way in other aspects of life and just transforming. And one of the greatest things that I was able to go through in this experience is a deeper exploration of self. And I'm so grateful for it.
Yes.
Because what it called me to was my foundation. It refined me, right? And it takes time and years, because when you ground down in love and God, and that's what my foundations were, was like, I see love, I see God, I see so much true divine unity here. I see so much happening here. Those were my roots, because all that extra stuff is out the door. I always say, I'm like, if I was gonna go dig, I'd go digging, but I'm not gonna do that. Like, this is not the case. There's a lot of, like, for me, depth and substance that was anchoring me down. But what I found ultimately at this stage, my true depth and substance, God, to my own self, to thy own self be true. Who am I really? And it was there, but I was like trying to find my way. What is all these different elements coming in? And it got down to God. And what I came to realize was a deeper understanding of myself in such a way that I was able to access with the psychology journey. And we talked about this a little bit last time, but I had to assess my roots with my mother and why my mother allowed certain things in her life. And I thought, wow, Mom, why'd you do that? And when my mom said to me, she never really assessed it. I had this real conversation. It was just heavy. Wow. I was like, I don't know. I didn't want to be like your grandmother. I didn't want to be alone. And I was like, mind blowing for me. And I said, are there aspects of me that are generationally domino effect like that? Are there vulnerabilities in me that feel that are not based on these other things that may impact other women and are really vulnerable for other women? I'm guarded in these areas. But was there an aspect of home? Because you said your mother did everything to make sure that you didn't ever have to go through what she went through. And that's the thing that we mothers do in society, is like, we take what we receive in life and then we try to make it better, right? But what the key I saw was, how am I accepting or comparing unhealthy aspects of my life? I'm going, I never am going to get that. But then I accept other aspects of life that could be unhealthy. And, as I'm assessing psychology and all these things, and I see healthy all over, and the healthy is God. Oh my gosh, the God is so healthy in my life. And that's beautiful. But then it's parts. And I had to assess, why is it part and not whole, right? And why is it majority healthy, but then why is there parts that are what is that?
Now you're talking about something deeper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
Now you're talking about something like really, really much deeper. how do you assess, and this is for everyone and everyone out there as you're thinking about this, how do you assess your own worth and value? Okay. So when you have an idea about what makes you valuable and what makes you worthy, and if those ideas come from within, then that's a beautiful place and you're on the right track, right? But if your worth and value comes from what others think outside of yourself, and it comes from outside of yourself, what you look like, what others think you look like, how they think you're living, how they think that it is for you, what others think. You have to have the nicest, the flyest, the dopest, the most uppity whatever's you got. Then if that's what you think, that's what you need, and this is my worth and this is my value, and when I do this for people, then I'm valuable. If I say this, and then I'm valuable. If I look this way, and then I'm valuable. If your value and worth comes from outside of yourself, then that is the quickest way to get lost.
Right.
And then when we have this idea of what is of value and of worth to me, and where we begin to love on ourselves, and we find that worth and value in ourselves, and just like you're talking about your relationship with God, your relationship with your Creator, like that is the stuff that fills you. That is the stuff that where you feel loved. If you have a relationship with God and you're feeling loved, and then you're filled with so much love, the one thing that happens is you want to love more. You want to love. You want to love other people, and then you're giving love, and then other people are giving love to you, and then you're giving so much love that strangers are giving you love. You're walking down the street, you're doing your thing, and then people are just like, "Oh my gosh, you just look amazing today," and you're just
I love
like,
your spirit. I feel your energy, your vibe, right? Yeah.
And that is what it's really about. That's where the value and the worth, and you just walking down the street. You don't have to be famous and all this and have all these things. But there's so many people that just loved on you for no reason today. Right. And then you feel like, oh my goodness, this is it. This is happiness. This is joy.
And that's the key, I think, in women specifically, because I have this belief. And what I created, and we got to get back to this thing. I created the non-compete, right? It's about how I say queens don't compete with queens, right? Mm-hmm. It's about being so cognizant of yourself that you're able to be aware of others. Mm-hmm. Because when you're not mindful of others, that's because you're probably not mindful of yourself.
Boom.
And that's where I realized that there's a different perspective happening here when it comes to like the way that I see things in life sometimes. As I was, why wouldn't a person consider the person? Like, why didn't all those other women in that world think about the woman that was already that? What? Like, because
it becomes a competition.
Yeah, and that's not supposed to. And my thing is female vulnerability gets fed on by male ego. Male ego. Or masculine ego, but how you want to label it. But male ego feeds off of female vulnerability. But if you can own your vulnerability, you can become aware of it, and you can turn your vulnerability into a strength, no one can feed off of it. But where is that strength founded? And that's where I came to that self-awareness when we talked about love your neighbor as yourself. But first, what's the first thing is love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. The last time, that's where I was like, oh my gosh, I get it, and there was a long journey in the process, but it's only more love now that gets to be brought forth because the love that's being poured in is of God. And that is when you really love a person, and that's what we talked about, that I got you, and that really shows up when you're not afraid to say, no, this doesn't feel right, because you're no longer vulnerable to the, well, maybes. I accept it. It's like, do you really? Do you really?
Yeah, well, if I don't accept it, then he won't like it, and then I'll lose him, and then my worth and my value is gone.
But that's that Me Too positioning, that we get ourselves into as women. Let's be real. It doesn't give an excuse for the male's behavior. But as women, let's take responsibility for ourselves. How did we get there?
What are we allowing?
What did we allow in by our vulnerabilities to even walk into that door, which then became why do you do that to me? What we allow, what was it? What did we say? What we allow, we permit. What you permit, you promote. What you promote, you teach. Thank you to my boss at the psychology place I work at that first introduced that to me. But that is so real. And why? And that's where self-awareness comes in. And I just thought that this was profound because that dynamic with the family, what we get down to is, can we understand what was allowed and what was brought in? And then the implications that we as women have and the responsibility we have. Because when I looked at my mom, why'd you do that? Well, I was afraid of. And the fear fed the allowing and the permitting and the promoting and then the teaching that wasn't intended.
Yeah.
But wow, like that's powerful. And that's why I was like, this conversation has to continue because this is not just for people in this world, but this is for young girls that have to know their strength and their worth and their foundation. The mothers who are teaching it to those young girls. And I feel that responsibility to my daughter.
Yeah. You can't
And my
give
son.
away. I get you. And what you're making me think of is what we were talking about earlier offline is you can't give away what you don't have. So if you're not respecting yourself, loving yourself, lifting yourself up, then how can you give that to others? If you're not loving on you, how can you give that love out? But if you're filling your life with fear, with doubt, with resentment, then that's all you have to give.
Right. Yeah.
It's important.
That's deep.
Be
And
aware.
I think that's the moral of the story is to really know thyself. Otherwise, are we living in a false sense of identity? You know what I mean? And I think that that's the journey in life is to say, what is really me? And that's okay to go through different versions and things happen along the way. But what is really me? And then stand on that. And I think that's been a huge aspect of my journey. And I'm still learning. But I think the more we can become more self-aware, the more we can see these, you know, things start to operate in the healthiest way possible. You know, because I mean, we got even more to talk about, like what that looked like, but there's a whole trickle down effect that we have. And so it's not about, I think at the end, it's not about like, because there's an aspect of, okay, what'd your grandfather do? Or what'd your dad, you know, what was your dad thinking? And we talked about that a little bit, what it was rooted in last part one. But then it's the focus back on us as women.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this part was really huge. So I thank you.
Oh, I thank you.
What do you want to leave the listeners and viewers with to close us out with when it comes to your doctor advice, since we just blew all of your beautiful accolades to them in the beginning?
Wow. You know, it's interesting because I think about what we're talking about today and you're talking about fame, and fame, you know, you're talking about this false sense of identity, and that is fame. Fame is a temporary false sense of identity, right? Because it's a show. It's a persona, right? And the real person is after all the lights are off and the mic is off and there's no one there and there's no more people around. It's really about who are you and what are you doing to create the environment within your life? Are you filling yourself with love and allowing yourself to love? Or are you protecting yourself and being afraid, and all you have is you're cultivating these fears? You get to choose every day. You get to choose love or you get to choose fear. And if you choose fear, then you are not choosing love. They cannot happen at the same time. It's either you're in love or you're in fear. So choose.
And that leads us to another episode one day, which is going to be, what is love to you? Because for me, God is love. And that was a hard thing to say. Am I operating off fear or am I operating in God? Love, right? And that for me is my definition of love. God is love. And if it's not in God, then it's not in love. So what is my foundation and what is Richtoring this ability to operate? And what is that founded in? So it's like we say love, but then I go, well, what if this person thinks that they're loving? But what is it rooted in? What is their definition of love? You know, that's really that's where all the differences start to twist and turn. It's, I love. But what is love?
Ooh.
A surrendering, a giving. It's an all-knowing. I can go on and on.
Part 3? No, I'm kidding.
There we go.
So we got to close out because this has been a wonderful conversation, and we just hope that you guys will tune in again. We thank you so much, Dr. Burke, for being here with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Both for being so vulnerable, for sharing
Yes,
conversation with me. And I hope that it speaks to all of you out there. And we just invite you back for more conversation like this again on the Mama Gang podcast. We will see you next time. Join us again.
She learned and she watched and she listened. And so what ended up happening was he bestowed her with all that love and all that attention. And I think that there was a part of him that wanted to give back because he felt so guilty. Like the damage was so deep with his own daughters and his own children, his own sons, that he couldn't. It was almost like, I just got to start over. And so he poured in all this love. And, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to be very real. Like, I love my siblings. I love my brothers and sisters. They have a thing that lives within them that they're hurting. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard for them to receive love that I want to give them. I kind of feel like, well, if you let me love on your kids, then I can love you too.
Oh, that makes me want to cry.
So it's like my niecey right here. Like, I love her so much. And she's healthy. She's beautiful. She got it going on. I mean, like, she doesn't stop. She works so hard. I'm just so proud of her. And then I can just love on her and I can just pour into her. And there's not a rejection of love. It's an acceptance and an opening and a willingness to receive. And this is why I can just keep loving on her. And she's going to keep doing her thing, and she's going to keep being fabulous and amazing and keep reinventing herself and being awesome and wonderful. And she's had all this training. And another thing that we were talking about, where you were like, I've had all this stuff and I've had access to fame and celebrity and all this other stuff. And it's a training. My niecey ain't tripping. Her husband was trying to trip.
Yeah.
And like, girl, you better be lucky I'm showing you things. And she's like, this is old news, bro.
That's why I love her.
And matter of fact, move that hand from my shoulder.
Yeah.
I didn't give you permission.
Because you're trained up in that industry. When you were exposed to this stuff so early, you end up building up an insensitivity to the easy vulnerabilities. And that's why I was like, it's a whole nother perspective. That's why I connect with her, because she gets so much.
She does.
She can ride with me and understand how we don't worry about that
And the
stuff.
Looney Tunes of my dad and all the craziness that came with it, and all of his insecurities, and every time they came up, she was able to sit there with him and be like, it's okay, Grandpa, I love you. Like, whatever crazy, whatever issues, whatever drama is happening with your women, your daughters, your band members, your promoters, it's okay, Grandpa, I love you. How can I help?
Do you think that there's any real healing in that world? Like, if you could go retrospect, at what point, what would it have taken to help your grandfather come to a healed sense so that it didn't have to come from receiving unconditional love from kids? How could he have found it in his own healing?
That's a great question. He didn't think it was possible, so it wasn't.
Right. They feel like gods. Remember we talked about that? Like, they start to feel like their own gods. Like, oh, I'm God, and I because they can do anything.
And everyone
Everybody
accepts
does what there says, and everyone accepts their flaws. They can do whatever they want, and it doesn't matter.
Why change?
Right.
I still get all the benefit. Why change?
That's their mind.
And even though I may die with a fear of no one ever really truly loved me, or I wonder if people really truly love me, or I don't know what it really feels like to be really truly loved, because I never really opened myself up to be really truly loved, and then they could die with that.
They're okay with it.
They're okay with it.
See, and I'm not.
I don't know if they're okay with it.
That's where I take responsibility to be like, I'm going to show you. But then that's where
See,
I have to say,
I think that, I feel like you
God's
need to sit properly like my niece. Get over here. You ain't even sitting properly on my lap. You ain't even sitting properly on my lap.
But like, and that was the thing that we had said before, was like the Christ role that you take on in a hurt person's life, to say, I'm going to be that person to show you. But then when do you exhaust yourself to be something that you cannot take on God in that person's life as they take on God in their own life? How do you come to, you know what I mean, as a woman to release? That's what takes the faith to say, I'm going to trust God with you. Because what if perhaps me thinking that I'm just loving you and loving you and loving you is God, is giving the God. No, that's me hanging on and taking the role of God instead of me releasing and saying, you know what?
First of all,
pray, but you said
how egotistical is that where you feel like you can actually take on the role of God?
Isn't it? So you got to release it. I know.
You can't do that.
I think that for me, it was like, I know I'm not, but I'm trying to do everything I can. God, show me I can't. And I was like, and so it's like feeling responsible. And a lot of children who do feel responsible in households that are unhealthy, they feel responsible to fix and to be that peace and to make up for it. Then they go on to be adults who feel like they need to be that peace and fix and make up for it. And they find empathy for people and they come, that's me. I'm like, I want to help heal the world. Like, I want to do all of those things, And then I had to realize where my mom didn't stop. So now I have to. And there has to be a fearlessness in me, because when you say you have to know the type of man
that you just had these babies with.
When you say that,
right.
Mm-hmm.
There comes fear of going, well, then maybe no, under God, God knows that type of man more than me. And that's where the shift occurs. It's not, I don't have to know the type of man.
Yeah.
I have to know God. And then God knows that type of man that he allowed me to have these kids with. And then God takes over and I stand strong in God.
I'm with it.
You know what I mean? Like,
however, you still made the decision. This is the accountability that you have to have within yourself, that you made this decision to have children with this man and to continue your connection in life to this man forever and always.
Yes. And here comes where purpose,
because this is where
foundation.
You learn exactly, and this is where you grow, and this is where you become better. This is the calling upon your soul and your life.
Is it a matter?
I'm just hugging and loving on my knees, like I love you, baby. I love you. Oh, come on.
So sorry. Here's what I'm saying is it that's where it comes. Is it a matter of my purpose in this person's life? Is it to try to be that God in their life? No.
That's
the
egotistically ridiculous.
Comes in as it's my purpose on this earth to be a woman of God.
Yes.
Who lives in the purpose of giving everything I can to God and be that representation in this man's life till the end of time. I'm going to be in his life forever. Yeah. I'm going to be in my kid's life forever. Mm-hmm. So here comes me giving everything to God, trusting God with me, my kids, my family, my everything, and never letting up on my foundation of God. No matter how scary it looks like. Yeah. Being married to God and trusting God in the process. And whatever happens from that point forward is surrender to God. Yeah. And if God knows that man, then that's enough for me. As I know that man and I know God, then that's enough for me. And that was the shift. And that is the scary part. I love that. Because you want to take on I got to do this and I know this person. No, I don't have to. The true freedom is in God. And that's where it was like, oh. Yeah. Whoa, gives me the chills. Oh. God knows this person more than me. I know I do. I don't got to prove nothing. True. But if that's what my life is, if I live this earth and I die tomorrow, God forbid. But you know what I mean? Like if that's my story and that's my life, then amen. Okay, great. And so now let's say you don't die tomorrow, amen, and you live a long, long, fruitful life, okay? Then the idea of you doing all of these things and decisions that you made and all these things that have unfolded now, right? That this is before you. This is the challenge. This is the spiritual challenge that you've been given, the opportunity that you've been given to grow in this way. You put this upon your heart. You stepped into this. Even and what to get the most benefit out of it is for you to be able to say, okay, yes, I surrender to God, and yes, I'm a woman of God, and yes, and that's what I'll do, and that's how I'll live my life, and that's how I'll lead my life. Beautiful. However, do not forget that you still need to be accountable for all of your choices and all of your decisions, because that's how you grow. Yeah. That's the gift. But if you're surrendering and saying, oh, okay, well, I don't even have to know this man, and I don't even have to know me, and all I need to know is God, and that's it. No. Sure, that is true.
However, but to get the benefit, because faith without works is dead. Like God's given us all of these abilities, these faculties, your beauty, your brains, your gumption, your everything, for you to be able to make the most out of it and the best out of it.
Right.
So you have to be able to recognize, oh snap, I made these choices in the past. And then understanding, well, where was I at?
Right.
Where I made these choices. This is how my dad was able to be more loving. And I'll be honest with you, I think he was ashamed. I think he was ashamed that he wasn't able to be this person to his children. And he didn't know how to be. He was adopted. His mother was very mean to him. His grandmother died when he was 12, 13 years old. And that was it. And that was all the love that he really had. And so he's going out in this world and he's looking for love, and he's so desperate and thirsty for love that there's people who are coming and taking advantage of him. He was taking advantage of at 9. It's interesting. He told me he had this girlfriend at 9 years old. And I was like, okay, you had a girlfriend at 9 years old. And I was like, well, how old was she? And he said she was 30. And I was like, Daddy, that's not a girlfriend.
No.
What's happening?
Daddy, that's not a girlfriend.
What's happening?
Wow.
That's not a girlfriend, Dad.
Whoa.
Right.
Where it's
lot of
like,
things.
holy moly.
Yeah.
Right? So now think about a young person who just wants to be loved, that they're willing to accept a 30-year-old girlfriend
At
Yeah.
9.
at 9.
See, that's deep, and that's a lot.
At 9.
9 years old.
That's called molestation. That's called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
if that's
that
what
leads
she's doing.
also, imagine going through that at 9, and then you're 11 and you get signed to Atlantic Records. And 12, 13, you're this child star, and you're like, wow, all these women want me. I had a girlfriend since 9. I can have 10 women at the same time, 20 kids. You're doing the most. It's unhealthy behavior, but it's all you know.
But do you have to have that level of trauma, or what they don't realize, but no, to have that same sense of feeling of need and emptiness? Your story could look so different, and to some people look glorious compared to that, right?
Yeah.
And you could still have that same behavior without that, right? But the question is the self-awareness aspect,
Right.
and the choice that you're going to make, because his was so deep that maybe
Yeah.
his self-awareness never arose but before he could.
Well, I think that his
Pass.
self-awareness came probably like the last 10 years of his life. And that's the part where Sophia got to, and I was so glad Sophia was there.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that she was there, because she was just giving and loving and accepting and unconditionally loving him. And I think like that's what he needed. And the reason why I'm tearing up is because I think about how much, Sophia's mom wanted to have that position, or my other siblings wanted to have that position. But Sophia was able to hold that position, and I feel like she was the representation of the love and the siblings of what they wanted to have. But Sophia's heart wasn't hardened. It wasn't darkened. It was free and
God.
open.
And who gave that to you?
Boom.
Who gave
Boom.
you? Ooh, that makes me want to cry.
Boom.
Who
Sophia
gave
has
you
always
that
been
access
loving.
to God? The very person who wanted that
My mom.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your mom wanted that experience and chose to give it
Yeah.
to God through you, and then you got to share it with your grandfather. And that is why.
So grateful.
That is why, full circles back, makes me want to cry. I stand in God.
Amen.
Is because of what that happened a whole generation later. Activate earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Activate earlier.
Yeah. And what if you're meant to understand and love unconditionally with your boundaries, right? Because you can't be a role model for others when you're getting stepped all on.
Amen.
Right? So what if your position in this life is to endure all of this and still stand in love and still stand in from an ethical perspective?
It gives me chills.
Right?
Yeah. I
And that
agree.
your life and what you do and your children are supposed to permeate throughout all of your children's siblings.
Jesus.
Because that's what I want to do. I want to love all my siblings. I don't want them to be mad anymore. I don't want them to be hurt anymore. I want them, they're forgiven. Like whatever it is that they think that they did wrong, or whatever it
didn't.
is that they didn't.
They didn't do anything.
And then because of, this is just one man
and all of his insecurities, and he couldn't look at himself. And I think that he spent a lot of time with other women creating more drama so he didn't have to look at himself. And one of the things that happened was my mom was like, okay, basically whatever you're doing, you're a hot mess and I can't stop it. So I'm just going to accept it all. And guess what? And I'm going to love you. And I'm just going to love you. And I'm going to love you. And I'm going to let your children and our children that we have together and the children we're raising together, I'm going to let them love you. I'm not going to talk down about you. I'm not going to this and that, da, da, da. And he found a way in which he could love. And then from that, he was able to grow. From that, he was able to mature. From that, he was able to open his heart and love his granddaughters, love his grandkids, allow them in. Like, he's, I am so excited for my family to have the grandchildren and the love of the grandchildren that is now, okay? Because they had all this love. It was just that my siblings' hearts have been hardened with their experiences in life, the hardships that they've had, and then the blame that they place, right? That my siblings need to release that and be able to free themselves to love. But I'm so grateful that I have nieces and nephews that are like, well, I'm open. I don't have to carry that baggage. And I'm sorry that my parents went through that. I'm sorry that my mom went through that. I'm sorry my dad went through that. But my heart is open. And this is why I get to be blessed. I have an awesome niece like Sophia and Prince, a nephew like Prince and Divine and Gino. And I'm just talking about my sister Dee Dee's kids. All of them fabulous. And then they're choosing mates that are fabulous. It's like awesome. Like Sophia's bringing in my nephew, her husband, and he's awesome and dope and amazing. And it's just like, and now they're having children. It's like, it's a beautiful thing that's occurring. Whereas if people hold on to the hurt and the harden and the pain and the suffering, then that's what they'll have more of. Right. But all those who have let it go, we get to grow now. And that's why I'm even honored and I get to be here on this and do this.
We love you so much.
I love it too.
We kept rolling this whole time, guys.
Wow.
We're going to have to edit some of this.
Yeah.
Come back on because this was too intense
great.
and too deep and too real.
Yeah.
I think for me, it just speaks to wisdom. And they say that a smart person learns from their own mistakes. A wise person learns from the mistakes of others. And I correct that with the word mistake being switched with experiences. Mm-hmm. Because a smart person learns from their own experiences, but a wise person learns from the experiences of others. And that's why this is so important. Is because I desire wisdom and understanding, and I desire for other people to gain more wisdom and understanding, so that the men that watch can become more self-aware of the way that they don't see how they can actually be thinking they're doing something in their own self, but it's something underneath that could be driving just like that. And then the desire for intention for good, but then still have something running. And then to see as women and children and grandchildren how we can overcome things that have happened in the past and present day to start transitioning the trajectory of what's going on in our kids' lives. So that it doesn't have to be this happening over and over again and stories of this happening again. Instead, it can just be the long haul upward.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm like, this is powerful.
So is that what you're meant to do? Is that possibly what's happening? Is that you're meant to uplift all of the children? You're meant to uplift because your children have siblings.
Right.
And you loving on them and showing that it doesn't even matter, like you're still loved.
She does do that.
And then it's this centeredness. This centeredness, going back to the story of Sophia, where you're talking about wise people learn from others, right? So you learn from your own mistakes, and if you're wise, you learn from others as well, right? Sophia asked a lot of questions. Sophia was like, wait a minute. And now what was so beautiful about Sophia, she knew she attempted to ask her grandfather, and then he would evade or avoid or not really tell it or tell it, right? So she got the stories depending on what he was able to share. But then there was other times where Sophia was like, Auntie, can I talk to you, please? Because this doesn't even make any sense. Why does
Keep it
grandma do
real.
this? Why does this and that? And da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, that's a good question, baby. I've had to think about that myself.
Keep it real.
And then I tell her, well, this is what I think is happening. And the place that I come from is love and compassion.
Can we have a real conversation about what that conversation sounded like?
To be like,
been many.
this is, look at how fabulous she is. This didn't happen overnight.
I know.
You know, Sophia came in and all she was loving and giving. She was just loving and giving. And that was it. And then it was like, I think that's what allowed, and then her consistency in that, it was almost like, okay, she's not fronting. She's not playing. She's not faking.
Yeah.
This is who she is. Yeah.
And that is true.
I mean, I
That
think
is
that
so
makes
true
her.
about her.
I think that what makes her such a pioneer in what she's
Yes,
doing,
she's
because
amazing.
she tackles this world of entertainment from this very loving, giving place. Like, who
Amazing.
does this, right?
Amazing.
Who does that?
The only
right?
woman I
Love you
know
guys
like
so
her
much.
that can just be as faith.
I know. I don't hope. I know that this conversation has impacted, enlightened, and just been so helpful. Because I know that just because we're talking about entertainment and fame and unhealthy families, I'm sure there are families that are not famous that are going through the same thing. So just know that God is love, and continue to, no matter how unhealthy the situation is, when you move in love and forgiveness,
Yes.
we can heal, and healing is the answer. So
Love and
Thank you,
forgiveness.
Love. God is love. Yeah.
Move in
Subscribe.
love and forgiveness.
I think now we're really done. We're probably going to keep talking more. They can
Yes.
turn it
Right.
off officially. This is like extra scene nobody gets to see, know about. Oh my gosh, will we release this?
Lowdown.
Gosh, they in the tea.
Exactly. Oh, in the tea. That's what this is.
In the tea.
In the tea. The mama game.
The
And that's
the
a wrap.
tea in the cut.
All right. Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you. Wow.
Wow,
Now that
yay,
was
you
what I was waiting
guys.
for.
Wow. Well, there's limits,
Yeah.
right? Because
It's like
then
when
you
the
start
camera,
to
that's
feel
what we're
like-
going to say when we call cut. This is what happens when the camera's.
Yeah, that's
when
what you gotta
we
keep it
call
rolling
cut.
anyway.
You got to just let it roll.
after we call cut. Yeah. But I also am very, like, I was raised in this. So I'm tempered in what it is I'm saying. I'm not,
You're
you know, when
seasoned.
we're
Auntie
rolling,
Riri.
it's like,
You're
hold on, I
seasoned.
can't get too deep. I can't tell too much.
I
I'm not going
know.
to